Hi, everyone, and welcome to our event tonight, Libraries Night Out, Oregon Edition. My name is Erica Melnichuk, and I'm with Penguin Random House. I have just a couple of housekeeping items to touch upon here before turning things over to our amazing speakers for tonight. If you want to submit questions to the authors, you can do so by utilizing the Q&A box, which you will see at the bottom of your screen. You can also upvote questions submitted by others within the Q&A box. You can activate the Zoom chat, which should also be at the bottom of your screen, and comment right along with the conversation if you'd like to do so. Please do stop by and say hi in that comment box. It's my pleasure to take this moment with all of you to thank the many Oregon libraries who partnered with us to promote tonight's event throughout their communities in support of their home state author, Eileen Garvin. We at Penguin Random House deeply appreciate their support of our books and authors, as well as their tireless support of readers everywhere. Throughout these trying times, libraries have remained a steadfast source of materials and resources, comfort and community for us all. So again, a huge round of applause, virtual applause, for the hard work and dedication of libraries in Oregon for tonight's event, and libraries across the country as they continue to place the most wonderful books into the hands of their readers. Now it's my pleasure to turn things over to a very special guest before we introduce our speakers for tonight. Rebecca Vanook is the Executive Director of Library Reads. Rebecca, if you would please come up on screen here with me, that would be great. Hi, Rebecca, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much, Erica, and thank you, Penguin Random House and Oregon Libraries, for inviting me to participate tonight. As Erica said, I'm Rebecca Vanook, the Executive Director of Library Reads, and I'm here to just spend a little tiny short amount of time telling you about us. So in case you don't already know about Library Reads and participate, we are a registered 501c6 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to connect adults with books that library staff across the country recommend. We also do free training and events for library staff centered on readers advisory for adult patrons. Library Reads advocates for adult books of all types, so please vote for your favorites every month. Anyone who works in a public library in the US is eligible to vote. It doesn't matter your job or your title, as long as you read adult books and love to share recommendations, you are in. The only requirement is that you do need to be signed up for NetGalley or Edelweiss in order to get the Galley copies and be working in a public library. The list comes out every month on the 15th. We publish that list to our website along with a link to the PDF flyer that you can print out to use in your library for display or handout purposes. You can find much more about us on our website, which is libraryreads.org, and on our social media accounts. Links to all of those are on our website. So that's enough about us, though. Here's what you're really here for. I'm so pleased to introduce our authors for this evening. Please welcome to the digital stage, Eileen Garvin and J. Ryan Straddle.
Hello.
Hi, Eileen. Hi there. So I'll do brief bios of them. Eileen Garvin is a beekeeper and writer living in Hood River, Oregon. Her memoir, How to Be a Sister, was published in 2010. The Music of Bees, tonight's discussion title, is her debut novel and has already been building quite the buzz. It was a Good Morning America buzz pick, a Good Housekeeping book club pick, an Indie Next pick, and was named a most anticipated book of 2021 by Women's World. It's also been featured in Book Riot, Bookish, Christian Science Monitor, Nerd Daily, The Tempest, Midwestness, The Coil, Read It Forward, New York Post, and most especially, it made the April 2021 Library Reads list. Yay! So talking with Eileen tonight is J. Ryan Straddle. He is a contributing editor at Taste Magazine, and his best-selling debut novel, Kitchens of the Great Midwest, won the 2016 American Booksellers Association Indies Choice Award for Adult Debut Book of the Year, and also the 2016 Midwest Booksellers Choice Award for Debut Fiction. His second best-selling novel, The Lager Queen of Minnesota, followed in those footsteps with rave reviews and blurbs. And of course, I am personally thrilled to note that both of those books named him to the Library Reads list. Woo! So take it away, friends.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. I'm thrilled to be here, and I really appreciate the support of Library Reads. I've been a huge fan of libraries since I was allowed to get my first library card when I was 6 years old in Spokane, Washington, and immediately following my very first library finds, because I've always been that person who just never gets the books back on time. But it's great to be here, and I appreciate your support and all the libraries who signed up to come tonight. And Jay Ryan, thanks so much for being here again to help me talk about books. It's great to see your face.
Oh, it's great to see your face too, Eileen. I would just wish we could do it in person at one of these
Me
libraries,
too.
but
Someday.
yeah, someday. Yeah, no, it's great to be here, and thank you to Library Reads. Thank you to Emily and Erica from Penguin Random House, and thank you to all the libraries that are here today. I grew up a library kid too. I grew up in a small town in Minnesota, and my favorite memories are going to libraries across the state with my grandmother and being that little kid who pulls the books off the shelves and puts them on the floor and reads them, sits there on the floor reading the books. That was me. And I always make it a point to hit as many libraries as possible during my physical book tours. So it's wonderful to do a virtual one. Well, without further ado, yeah, let's talk about Eileen and her awesome new book. There is a link in chat to buy it from Wacoma Bookstore in her current town of Hood River, Oregon. It's a wonderful bookstore. Please support that independent, locally owned store. And if you don't have this book already, I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of my writing, you're going to love this book. A very similar characters, vibe, just a general, like, optimistic book. Exactly the kind of book I've been wanting to read. After
That's how I felt about when I was reading The Logger Queen of Minnesota. I felt the same way. Just a small town people that are trying to do their best and that make you feel better. So yeah, I think we're in good company.
Oh, thank you. I know some people have told me that they think your book does for aviaries what my book did for breweries, and I also appreciate your attention to detail. The way that it's, you clearly left some research on the floor when it came to what you know about beekeeping versus what you put into the book. But most of all, I also love how location specific your work is. Just like my books, your novel couldn't have taken place anywhere else. And tell me how the response has been in Oregon and in Hood River to have one of their own have a splash in the publishing world like this.
It's been wonderful. I've received so much support locally and regionally. The Oregonian newspaper in Portland, and there was a wonderful article in The Source, which is the Bend Weekly, and then in Hood River, the Columbia Gorge News and the Columbia Insight magazine and the Chamber and another magazine quarterly. It's been really wonderful. It's a small town, so it's very common to run into people at the grocery store or wherever, and or in the mountain bike trail, and my friends it's been terrific. And it's also been a little weird for me too, because in a fun way, because I'm sure you know this too, when you're writing about a place, I should say the Music of Bees is about my fictionalized version of Hood River. There's a lot of I'm kind of taking a lot of poetic license, but there are some places where I'll be on a road or in a store, and I'll remember that I took something from that place, and there's a scene, and then I realize I'm in that place talking to someone about the book. But it's been kind of hilarious in that way. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Would you mind reading a short excerpt
Yeah.
from your novel that specifically set in Oregon that evokes this landscape?
I'd be happy to. And I was looking at the list of, there's so many wonderful towns, Oregon towns, that I think are here tonight watching. And I should say that while I was writing The Music of Bees, I was also doing a lot of travel writing for Travel Oregon. And so all the towns of Scappoose and Clatskanie, and of course Hood River and Lincoln City and Salem, these are all places I've been, and smaller towns that I think, so I picked something that will speak to folks who don't live in Portland. And And I should say, I've been to every one of these towns over my writing about them, except for Helix. And I was like, where's Helix, Oregon? And I looked it up on the map, and I actually drove right by it today. I was driving through Stanfield. So I haven't been to Helix, but I've been near Helix. So what I'm going to read now is from very early in the book. And the main characters, Alex Holtzman, is leaving Portland, and she's driving back to Hood River, and she's just gotten out of a snarl of traffic and feeling that sense that we all have who live in smaller towns, the relief of getting away from a bigger urban area. Okay. At the exit from Multnomah Falls, which marked the halfway point to Hood River, Alice saw 2 cars pulled over on the shoulder, a fender bender from the looks of it. The lane was cleared by the time she reached it, but everyone was still rubbernecking. 2 men stood next to their dinged up cars talking on their cell phones, probably some tourist trying to take a photo without the inconvenience of stopping. It happened all the time. People leaning out the window to snap a photo of the 611-foot waterfall. After the wreck, the highway opened up, and soon she was doing 80, heading east as the sun dropped behind her. The freedom of movement made her feel calmer. Alice took off her hat and sunglasses. She unhooked one strap of her overalls, at admission that they didn't really fit anymore, but she didn't care. She turned up the music, Springsteen's Born to Run. Alice disliked Portland with its confusing network of bridges, snarls of traffic, and aggressive panhandlers, but the open road leading away from it, she loved. Basalt cliffs overlapped each other in a view that unfolded mile after mile along the Columbia River. She knew the distinct monoliths by heart: Rooster Rock, Wind Mountain, Beacon Rock. In the early sunset, the green hills and rocky crags were cast in a pink veil. It looked like a painting, like a dream. Alice never grew tired of looking at it, this impossible beauty she had lived within for 44 years. She passed a semi and glanced at the wide river on her left. The dark green water was frothy from the wind, white caps whipped up and pushing against the current. She saw a mass of white pelicans resting on a gleaming sandbar and towering Douglas fir trees leaning out over the water. An osprey circled the river, keening. On the right, she saw the headlight of an oncoming train. It passed her, and she heard the whistle blow and recede. The sun threw a gauzy light over the water, and Alice felt her body relax. So that's just a little taste of this scenery that you get from the music of these.
Awesome. Yeah, I absolutely love that kind of writing. And I love these characters. Alice, Jake, and Harry, your 3 point of view characters, are all wonderfully flawed and still deeply sympathetic, which is a really difficult balance. One writer to another, but you pull it off, and it's, you give them all their own goals and strengths and weaknesses. And one of the pleasures of this book to me is seeing these 3 people work together. So yeah, please tell us what inspired these characters.
Well, they came about, they sort of revealed themselves to me one at a time, and Jake came first, and he is the most, I guess you'd say, modeled after a real person, at least physically, but it's someone I don't know. The day before I started this book, I was driving through town in the same neighborhood that the book opens in. And it's Tucker Road, which leads out of Hood River and down into the valley where all the orchards are. And the orchards were blooming, and I was actually driving to pick up a new starter nucleus of bees from a beekeeper. And I was driving south, and coming north was a young guy in a wheelchair with a mohawk. And there's Tucker Road is like, there's no bike lane. It's a country road. And so it was a very unusual sight to see this young person with a very, arresting, tremendous hairdo in Hood River. And it's a small town. I didn't know who he was, and which gave me pause. And the first line for the book just jumped into my mind, which is Jacob Stevenson had the tallest mohawk in the history of Hood River Valley High School. And I didn't go to high school here. I didn't have kids in the high school, but I just pulled over, scribbled it down. As a writer, you've got to grab those moments when they come. And then I got my bees, and the next day I started writing it, and he came first, and I kind of knew that boy, that boy that he, aside from his trouble, that his main trouble, his imminent crisis, which is that he was born able-bodied and now he's had an accident and finds himself with a whole new life in front of him. But aside from that, he's that 18-year-old who's, fighting with his dad. He wants to get out of this small town, and he has, latent talents, but he's just not quite himself yet. And I loved him so much, and I wanted to see, so he kind of came first. And then Alice and Harry also sort of appeared in the, in the edges. And it was really, I should say, this is my first crack at fiction. And my background being in travel writing and business writing and creative nonfiction, I usually have the facts in front of me, and then I just try to assemble them in a interesting way. But this was totally new, and I felt like I was just trying to keep up with them as they were making themselves known to me.
Did you know in your heart you'd write a novel someday? I mean, like me, you don't have an MFA, so you were never in a academic course that would have compelled it upon you, right? So what made you think of when that sense popped in your head? What made you think this is a novel?
I really don't even know. And I'm so glad I didn't stop to think about it very much. I mean, I've been wanting to write a novel since I was that 6-year-old kid at the library going through the stacks like we were talking about. And I've never taken a very traditional approach to anything in my career, in my life. And I've always written, even going back to college, I would write everything. I would read and read and read, and then I'd sit down and write all in one go. And so this felt very familiar in that way. And I knew from writing my memoir that I had to go about it without any hope or expectation that it would ever get published, because would get completely in the way of the creative process. So I just had to trust that it was a game, and just see where it went. But I didn't have any sense of whether it was going to work or not. Because as you said, I don't have an MFA. I didn't have a writing group. I never workshopped. And so it was really just blind leap of faith and a game. It was just play.
Awesome. I think that's I frankly think that's tremendously inspiring. I love hearing stories about people who took unconventional paths to their first novel, and yours certainly is it. But you did learn from writing the memoir and from your previous experience writing how important the revision process is. And
it is, yeah. And I think when you and I talked about this once before, and I called it excruciating tedium. That I I really, I definitely finally got sick of it. But I could go over it again and again, and I have experience as an editor, so I love that. Like taking somebody else's piece and sort of standing back a little bit and saying, how is this working? What are the parts? What's missing? And I feel like, having been an editor and having edited having my own work edited, it gave me a chance to not take things so personally. So I could, instead of feeling really precious about it, like, oh, I can't change anything, I could say to myself, like, okay, try to pretend like this is, somebody else's, stand back from it. And what's missing? Like, are you nodding off in the first page? Like, cut that out of there. So, but revision is, I don't even know how you really separate revision from writing, because it's not like you have this thing that's kind of 90% there and then you just sort of clean it up. It's really ongoing.
Right. I view my process as, my first draft is me putting ingredients on my kitchen counter, and my second draft is deciding what I want for dinner from those.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all part of a journey. They're two distinct activities, though, and reconciling them and finding things to enjoy about each activity has been crucial for me. So yeah, but there are days where I feel like, I've been doing this for a while. Like I've been
Maybe
stuck on this page for a little too long. Yeah. And then I just have to get up and go for a walk or go for a hike out back, or do something. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the my favorite moments, like with driving to pick up the bees, I get my best ideas for writing and also for revision when I'm outside, usually in the woods with the dog by myself. There's something about movement and getting away from the computer that you suddenly get, oh, I know, that's where that one part, that what needs to be fixed there is this little thing. And I find that so helpful, that to just get up and move.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah, me too. I'm a perambulator. I just get up and go for, walks around the office, but also walks up and down the street around the neighborhood. And yeah, I've been like that since I was a kid. But okay, yeah, back to you, please. Yeah, I love this novel. If that's not if that hasn't been
Oh,
clear
thank
so
you.
far, and
Thank you.
and I want to once again urge anyone watching to buy it. I guarantee you're going to love it. And one of the things I love about it is that while it has a couple of antagonists, by and large, it portrays people being kind to each other and helping each other out, which feels revolutionary in contemporary fiction. And I'm
Right.
thinking of Harry's friendship with the kite surfer, something that probably would have taken a much darker turn in 90% of contemporary fiction.
Yeah.
So what drives you to infuse this goodness and hope, and and helpful collaboration in your books?
Well, I love that you said it that way because it's interesting to hear other people talk about your work. And um, I tend to read pretty depressing fiction myself. I don't mind a dark story, and I didn't really expect it to turn out so. Well, I don't know spoilers, but yeah, I mean, like you characterize it is people helping each other, and um, I knew that Harry and Alice and Jake all were, struggling in different ways. Um, and ended up by accident sort of helping each other out. And I suppose that comes from my own life and just what I've seen around me. And the kite beach is the easiest one to answer that question because people tend to think of it as sort of this extreme sport, and certainly it is. But I kiteboard, and I'm certainly not a thrill seeker. And it's the kind of sport that you really can't do by yourself, kind of
Mhm.
like in football, you can't, well, I suppose, yeah, you can't really score by yourself. It's a
No.
teamwork thing. So
Yeah.
when you go to the beach, it is gotten safer, but it's terrifically dangerous. And so you have to have somebody else launch you. And sometimes you'll be down there and you don't know anybody. And there's a code of ethics that people just like, you don't want to watch somebody get, broken ribs or, some terrible injury. So people tend to be kind and helpful. And so
Mhm.
that was easy to see somebody like Yogi, just seeing Harry, like kind of the 90-pound weakling, and thinking like, he seems like a nice guy. I'm going to sit down and chat with this guy. And then, I'm not going to I don't want to give anything away, but I've seen that happen, and friendships that form among the most unlikely people because it's the sport that brings people together. Um, I mean, I have kiting friends who are like physicians and people who work in the mining industry and people who live in their vans all year. Like it's a real mixed group. And as far as Alice, she's so impatient with people and she's very much introverted, but once she's around these two, she kind of takes on this mama bear attitude of like, oh God, like come over here, she's gonna do what she can't. She was born and raised by her parents to be kind, and so she does what she can. And Jake really is, despite all of his troubles, he's a pretty nice kid too. He has a nice mom. His dad's kind of a jerk, but he he's got a good core. So I think
Mhm.
they're all contributing in their own way, and I think that's what we all do, like when we're at our best. And I think, I wrote this book before the pandemic, but I was certainly revising it during the pandemic. And I saw a lot of people doing exceptional stuff all around me in my town and in our country, really digging deep to offer what they could, in ways that I think we found kindness unexpectedly during the past year. So maybe some of that came through.
Awesome. Yeah, and it certainly does. All right, I have two more questions for you. So anyone watching who would like to submit a question, do so via the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. And just giving you a heads up that I'll ask two more questions, so you've got time to get yours in and get yours in the queue. Once again, yeah, don't enter in the chat, enter it in the Q&A.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it's down there at the bottom on my screen. It's on the right hand side. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So here's something we didn't talk about last time. We spoke on your launch day. I'm curious as to what inspired your antagonists. I mean, there's a few, and what inspired the situations that created conflict for your characters, particularly Alice?
Oh, Alice, I guess just very generally speaking, I'll say I don't work for the Edinburgh County Planning Department. And I was the Trisha Walker, who writes for the Columbia Gorge News, interviewed me, and I don't know her personally. Now I do, but she emailed me and she said, "I loved your book. But my husband is the Hood River County Planning Commissioner." And I thought, oh, well, he doesn't, he's not Bill Chenoweth. And she said they thought it was funny that he had assistants and things. So none of that comes. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
It's not in the budget.
But yeah.
Yeah.
But no, Alice is more, I've worked with a lot of people like Alice. I've even felt like Alice from time to time in my own life, that, where you're working really hard and you just feel unappreciated. And there's I won't go too far into it, but there's some sexism there, where like the creepy kiss at the Christmas party and stuff like that. And it just kind of felt like, she's 44, and you get to a certain point in your life as a woman where you're like, I'm not going to play nice anymore with this. This is where I draw the line. So she's just sort of in a place where the things that she wanted the most, she wanted to run her parents' orchard. She wanted, that's really what she wanted. And she, and other things that relationships and stuff, they're not there. And she's really having to take stock. And I certainly did that in my own life. And I know a lot of women, all my friends who have, so that's where she came from. Sorry, you were just asking about Alice, I guess.
Well,
Yeah.
oh no, any of them, like Jake's dad or
Yeah, and Jake's dad is he had a larger part in the first draft, and like he kind of faded. But what's really unsaid about Jake's dad is that he was a pretty great dad until Jake was older. So he was a good provider and fun. And there's some parts in there where Jake has fond memories of his dad, and then something happens. And just in the backstory, as I imagine it, Ed was doing well at work, and then had a conflict with somebody and made a mistake and didn't have the skills to explain himself, and so he quit or got fired. And then then now he's working for a construction company, and he's not making as much money, and he feels sort of less. He feels lesser, and he's angry, and he doesn't know how to be better. And I don't write about what happens with Ed, so we don't know in this book. But I think I've seen that too, where in my childhood friends and things, where dads didn't know what to do with their kids when they became teenagers. They were kind of lost. They could do the little boy thing, but then when they were face to face with a man, there was this conflict. And then Jake is now using a wheelchair, and Ed just doesn't have it in him to see that as an opportunity, but besides he's just angry about it. So I've seen lots of people get stuck like that.
Yeah, well, it's really cool of you to see the compassion in these, I'm sorry, to have compassion for these characters and to see the humanity in them, in spite of the fact that they're portrayed as opposing the desires of your protagonist. So once again, I'm sorry, go ahead, Eileen.
Everybody can change, who's to say? Maybe Ed got some counseling and came back around, but we don't know. But we're all human, and we all make mistakes. And I think if we can find our way, then we can count ourselves lucky and hope for that in other people.
I agree. Yeah. So, what have you been reading lately, if you've had time, or is there a book you'd like to recommend us to check out?
Yeah, I try to read a lot of different kinds of things. Essays and novels and memoir, because those all interest me, and I feel like they feed the kind of the raw materials for what I want to write about in my own writing. So I will say I'm a chronic reader of fairy tales. Anything like Brothers Grimm, Hans Christian Andersen, any myths and legend, like that's like a constant. But some things I've been reading lately, I really love this book by Yasmina Barrera. She's a Mexican writer, and it's a book of essays called Lighthouses, and there's sort of it's interspersed memoir and her reflections on lighthouses in different countries. It's really wonderful, unique book. And I'm also reading Sandra Cisneros' A House of My Own. She wrote a novel in the 90s called The House on Mango Street. She's a Mexican American writer, and I wanted to read her memoir because I heard her give some fantastic advice recently. It was a podcast I was listening to, and someone asked, what should young writers do? What was her advice to young writers? And the advice she gave was very specific and very different from anything I'd heard. And she said three things. She said, control your fertility, make your own money, and solitude is sacred. And she's saying that to, the fertility part, to men and women. Like, if you're going to have kids, like, really think about how that's going to fit into your writing life. Make your own money so somebody else can't, tell you what to do with your time. And solitude is sacred. So know that you're going to have to say no to people and protect your time. And I just thought that was so succinct and beautiful, and really loving her memoir. And then I'm also I love fiction so much. It's just my escape. And I recently read Hollow Kingdom by Kyra Jane Buxton, which is a wonderful novel. The main character is a talking crow, and it's about this, right after the zombie apocalypse in Seattle, and he's trying to find a cure for what has befallen humans that have been sort of ruined by their iPhones and all gone crazy. And so he's going out he loves his human, and he's a pet crow, and he's trying to find the solution, and it takes him on many adventures. And Kyra has a new book coming out this summer called Feral Creatures that I'm really excited to read.
Wow, fantastic. Thanks for those recommendations, and for sharing Cisneros' wisdom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even when it's secondhand, boy, that's some good advice. I'm gonna.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I'm gonna pass that on. All right. Well, yeah. Let's turn it over to the questions in the Q&A, and if we get through them before there's any more, I've got a few more questions in the hopper I can ask you tonight. But let's hear from some readers first. And I've got one question already queued up for me that I'll take. I think Rebecca is eventually going to moderate this part, but I'll take this first one. And that's, how did you get into beekeeping, Eileen?
I got into beekeeping in 2014 because I was looking for a distraction. My wonderful 16-year-old dog was, clearly in her last season and couldn't really leave the yard much. And so I wanted a new hobby that would allow me to sort of be there with her. And beekeeping is, it's pretty easy to get into, which is for better or for worse. You can kind of jump in without a lot of guidance. And a friend of mine had a top bar hive, which is different than the ones that I have in the book and that I have at home. But it was just, she told me just about watching them and their collective behavior and the labor. And I thought, this sounds really fun. So I bought my first hive in 2014 and put it together and got my first package of bees that spring. And so I've had a hive ever since.
Awesome. You mentioned a piece of beekeeping lingo earlier when talking about your encounter with the character you're with the person who inspired the character of Jake. Nucleus?
Yeah. So when you're
what does that look like?
Thanks for asking. So when you start a hive, there are, really two ways to go about it. You can go get a swarm, which is pretty epic undertaking for a brand new beekeeper, which people do it. It's when the bees have decided that they're too crowded, half of them will leave with the queen, and it looks just like the picture in Winnie the Pooh. It's like this big thing. And they're very docile, and they're just like looking for somewhere, and they'll like hang out in a tree, and you can cut the branch off and put them in a box. But that's, it takes some commitment. Or you can buy either a package of bees, which is just a box. It's a screen box, and it's got about 10,000 bees in it, and a queen is in there in a little separate container because they're not a family yet, and they have to get to know her pheromone or they will kill her. So you get this box. It's like really, they're all upset and buzzing, and that's how I started. And it's pretty exciting because you have to take that and cut it open and drop it into your hive. Or you can get a nucleus, which is more docile, and so that's what Alice goes to get. And what that is an existing hive. It's a queen who's the mother of all the bees, And it's like half of a box, like each hive box is like, they look like file boxes, if you can imagine
Hmm.
that. And each one
Yeah.
that I have has 8 frames in it. And they
Hmm.
come out, and they look like it's like a picture that you would hold up, and it's covered with wax and bees. And so a nucleus is 5 frames of those, and they all know each other already, and they're very calm. And
Hmm.
so that's a really easy way to begin, because when you go pick them up from a beekeeper, you get them in this little box, you take them home, and you can just take them out, and they're all like very calm and chill and like, oh hi, but there's not a lot of drama. And that's they also have already built out wax and honey and pollen, so they're on their way, to getting a bunch of new babies going.
Okay. And in the book, Alice also lives and works at an orchard. Is that ideal, or is that kind of ecological system or something comparable to what you have, or in your experience, like um, what ecosystem do you operate your hives in?
Mine is I'm not near any orchards, but you can keep bees really anywhere. It's been
Oh, okay.
pretty big in Portland lately. There's a lot of rooftop restaurants and bars that are doing it, because bees will forage for nectar up to 2 or 3 miles, and they get a
Oh.
lot of it from people. Have this idea, they're like, oh, there has to be a field of clover or something, but they actually get a ton of nectar from trees, like maple trees, little tiny blossoms you don't see. And so
Mm,
mine is just in a backyard neighborhood, and I plant a lot of bee friendly flowers just because I like to plant native plants. But I
mhm.
think they get a lot of their sustenance from wild blackberry bushes that just grow kind of out in the parks around me. And I have 2 hives operating now. And I have friends who have larger operations that live out in the country, and I wouldn't want to get any bigger than I am right now, just because I have a dog and she's allergic,
Oh,
things like
okay.
that. But yeah, you can kind of get them going anywhere, as long as you have enough space to really walk around them, so you have enough room to work the hive.
Awesome. All right, now we'll go to some questions from readers and listeners that are here tonight. Catherine asks, what did you do to research life as a paraplegic, and what made you to decide to include that in Jake's character?
That's a great question. I really started with that person that I drove by. And when I jumped into writing Jake, I don't use a wheelchair. I don't know anyone intimately who uses a wheelchair. And I started writing his experience really from a heartfelt position of having grown up with a sibling with severe autism. My sister Margaret's disability is very different than Jake's. Her biggest hurdle is communication, and I wrote my memoir, How to Be a Sister, is about my relationship with Margaret. And so my whole life has been formed by this question of, how do we make Margaret's life as good as it can possibly be? And
Hmm.
so that's where I start with Jake, because he now has a new set of circumstances, and he's trying to figure out how he can make his life as good as it can be. So I began with kind of the genuine interest that sprang out of my own background with a family member, but then really wanted to make sure that I was representing his experience as genuinely as I could. And so the research that I did for that included a lot of reading and movies. And a couple that I couldn't recommend strongly enough. There's a wonderful documentary out right now. I think it won some awards this year, called Crip Camp. That's about people who were really at the forefront of the ADA movement in the 70s in this camp. I can't remember what town it's in, but fantastic story about how they met in camp and then kind of launched this movement. And a great book that came out last year called Sitting Pretty, by Rebecca Tausig, that recounts it's about her life as a paraplegic. And it's part memoir, but also kind of just opening people's eyes to the fact that it's not like ADA accessibility is this special thing. It shouldn't be thought of as a special, thing for a small group of people, because we're all disabled at some point in our lives by age, pregnancy, illness, injury. And so um, universal design is really how we should be thinking about creating our public spaces. so those were very helpful. And then I also talked with a social worker in Hood River who was a huge help. She works with young adults who have recently sustained spinal cord injuries and are integrating into this new life. And then a couple of people, an old friend of mine, and then a new person I met through that social worker, who both had a similar experience to Jake, where they were born able-bodied, but then through an accident became, now face this different set of circumstances. So that's a long answer, but it was really important to me to think carefully about that. And I have to say, it's made me look at my town with really different eyes, because one of the folks that I interviewed who lives in Hood River, she's paraplegic and she drives a car. But when you think about like getting out of your car as an able-bodied person in a tourist town like ours can be a huge undertaking. And so it just makes me look at how we have a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to hear the resources that you sought and the information that you sought to flesh out that character. Because yeah, as you point out, it started as this inspiration, this stranger. And yeah, you could have, as a novelist now, yeah, you don't need to seek out the facts, but it's great you did.
Yeah, yeah.
It resonates throughout that character, the work you did to understand him and understand the world that as he sees it. All right, we got 2 more questions now. Liz writes, since you've been a nonfiction writer previously, was fictional dialogue difficult, whereas descriptions of setting not as difficult?
Descriptions of setting were pretty easy, certainly, because as a travel writer and even as a features writer, and I started as a features writer and doing business profiles, and my editor and mentor at the New Mexico Business Weekly, we talked about, you got to draw somebody in right away, and so or you lose them, and in travel writing, you're trying to inspire people to imagine a place that they've never been to before. And so in that way, that came pretty easily and was fun for me. And dialogue's harder because dialogue can be really boring, And so I have a good ear. I think I have, I'm a singer. And I'm a huge eavesdropper. I so miss, one of the things I miss most about restaurants is just listening to other people talk, and because I'm fascinated. And so the dialogue part was harder. And as I'm sure you know too, Jay Ryan, when you in the revision process, you're really reading aloud, and oh gosh, that sounds wrong. Nobody would say that, or how can I might as well paraphrase what I've just written there because it's so uninteresting, so unless it's really saying something, it's I would take it out. So dialogue was harder.
Yeah, it can be, but yeah, eavesdropping is always fun. And that's one of the many things I've missed about restaurants over this last year and a half is being privy to conversations that you wouldn't have considered.
Right. Yeah. And just listening like chatter, listening to wait staff chatter. And,
exactly. That kind of stuff. Just hearing how like front of house interacts with back of house, or how they resolve a situation that you have nothing to do with that you've witnessed. It's it's cool.
And I have to ask you, I never asked you this before, but I have a lot of experience working in restaurants. I've worked in like every like everything from like cleaning the meat grinder to being a hostess or wait staff. Have you worked in restaurants or breweries?
Not since my early 20s. It's been a very long time.
Yeah. So you did. So I mean, it's like that stays with you, right? And it's such great people watching and interactions, like you said, front of house, back of house, things that customers do. It's pretty great. It's a great resource.
Yeah, and it's also a community. It's like, I don't know. It's not quite like being cast in a play, but when you're young and you're working with other people in hospitality, it gets tawdry. And there's there's places you hang out afterwards, like places where like people in the industry are treated well after your shift is over. There's a whole like ecology to it that's fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, you mentioned something earlier that I don't want to forget, and that's that you're a singer. I didn't know that. Really quick, what's your karaoke song or songs?
I don't do karaoke.
You don't? Okay.
No, but I sing. Right now I'm singing in a trio with 2 other women, and we're called Lady 8, and we play ukuleles and sing 3-part harmony. And I tend to like jazz and folk type stuff. So that's kind of my bag. I grew up as a choir nerd though, in symphonic choir. And so Jake's experience in jazz band is certainly I'm mining my own experience. And it was similar to what you just described with the way restaurant workers work together. The symphonic band bus, going to Canada in 1986, like that was formative. Formative stuff.
All right. Now, this was one of the first questions that came in, but I've been saving it for the end. So thanks for your patience, Anne. It's a good last question of the night, and it's, what's the next book?
That might be my sister. I'm gonna have to scold you later, Anne. That is
you. Oh
yeah. The next book I'm really excited to get back to work on, and I don't want to say too much about it because you know how that goes. You kind of lose I don't want to lose any of magic, but I'll just say that it's another novel, and it includes some more lost folks with problems to solve, which seems to be what I like to write about. So thanks for asking.
Nice. Is it also set in Oregon?
It's set in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm not sure if it's Oregon or a fictionalized version of Oregon. I definitely love I get a lot of inspiration from the woods and the outdoors. So I'm sure that'll work its way there, either fictionally or more realistically.
All right. And is this your last event for a while and you're going on vacation soon?
Yeah, this is my last event. I'm going to be doing some book clubs in person and virtual this summer, but right now I'm just taking some time to do some reading and get back into my writing.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's been wonderful as always, Eileen.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to meeting you in person someday.
I know, we got to make that happen.
Yeah.
You know where I live.
Yeah, I'll be coming through in about a month.
Yeah.
Whether if you're there or not. I know you won't be, but I'll be driving through.
Yeah.
Well, hi there, you two.
Hi, Erica.
I know what a lot of us viewers are going to be putting into our beach bags over the next few weeks and months. Thank you so much for highlighting your new book for us, Eileen, and all the great books that we could be picking up at our local libraries. That about brings our program to a close for tonight, unless you had any last comments or anything to share. Thank you both for being here and giving us this time this evening. I want to say a huge thank you to all of our viewers for tonight and all of the partnering libraries who took the time to promote tonight's event to their patrons and stocked their shelves with the music of bees. Thank you everyone this evening. Thank you, Eileen and Jay Ryan.
Thank you so much. And one last thing I did want to say, I didn't want to neglect this. I wanted to thank my own library and the others that worked so hard during the pandemic to keep books in our hands. Because I know that it was a lot of work and it remains a lot of work, and it really helped people during tough times. So thanks, librarians.
They're always there for us.
Thank you, librarians.
Good night, everybody. Happy reading.
Thank you.
Good night.